you can see, there we are. More queen cells. I think there might be an egg in those two. Yep, I think there's an egg there. Yep, there's the egg. So we know that in less than 10 days, these bees would have swarmed. Hi everybody, welcome back. We are near the middle of June and waiting for the nectar flow to start. It's kind of just in there. For all those who don't know, our summer nectar flow, it really consists of bramble and chestnut, which I bang on about all the time, obviously. But this year we have had like no rain. We had a little bit of rain, about 5 mil about a week ago, but it didn't really penetrate the ground. I was just going to say that over there, for instance, there's a crop of maize or corn, as you call it in America, but it's like half the size it normally would be because we've just not had the rain. And the rain we did have didn't even go, and it went in by that much, and then it's kind of dried off again. So there's not really, in my mind, the kind of maximum nectar flow we could have already, because the bramble that we get really relies on a lot of surface water or rain within the previous couple of months, and we haven't had that. So without being negative and depressive, it's not looking great for the summer flow, but I think the actual conditions for nectar gathering are different. So it all hangs on the balance. So I can't say either way whether we're going to have a lot or not. I mean, I've got quite a lot of hives that have got supers on. The hives are well fed. I haven't done many splits this spring. And that's what I'm going to talk about now, is that reason. Because I haven't done many splits, the majority of my colonies are still full of honey. And what happens is when you make a split, you take maybe a third or a quarter of the bees that are in that colony, and you take them away. And you take them away with a frame of honey, in other words, a frame of stores, some pollen, and some of the bees. But as you take that away, more bees hatch and that queen continues to lay, but there's no real nectar running when I usually do splits. So that colony starts to decrease that amount of honey quite quickly, that amount of stores that are left in the donor colony. So the nuke you've taken is quite small, and we feed that. So that never runs out, but then the colony that's left can really consume quite a lot of stores. Also, because when they get a bit of stress, they seem to eat a little bit more. But what does that mean for me this year? Well, that means that I'm kind of in a different situation where I've let my colonies be as strong as they kind of can be. The supers went back on after we had the first nectar pull. And then we had a second nectar flow, which was kind of like a weird phenomenon that we've never seen before. And chatting to a lot of beekeepers around here, they said it's once in a 10 to 12 year thing that they've seen. And it was just like perfect conditions for not a lot of forage, but what forage was there was gathered because the bees were strong and they had the ability to gather it because the weather was perfect. So, as I said, I haven't done many splits because I was so busy doing that second harvest. And I've got some queens today that I got sent to me last week. I've banked them temporarily. I've used a few already, but I'm going to be making up some mini plus mating nukes in a minute to use up those queens. Because what I'm going to do now is, rather than start making splits, looking at the calendar, we haven't got a lot of time left. So our main flow will start, and at the end, just about the end of the main flow, I've got another load of queens coming that I've ordered that I'm going to use to make my splits with. So remember, I'll be making my splits, and also I will be dividing my colonies at the same time. And when I divide it, I'll find the queen and I'll cage her. So that's another reason why I wanted to this year to try and leave the split of the colonies till later. And when I mean later, it didn't matter if I did an early spring split, but I just didn't have the time. So this year, leaving them a bit bigger will actually help me, because when I take some of those bees away and reduce them down to 7 frames rather than 10, I will have bigger colonies to do it with. So that when the queen is caged, don't forget, she won't be laying for 21 to 24 days. And then because of that, the numbers slightly decrease in the colony. But as soon as you release that queen, the nectar flow generally will start in September, October time. So it's like 3 or 4 weeks later, but there's lots of reserves in that colony. And I'll be feeding my colonies then as well. But while the queens are caged, I will be not feeding them. They will realise there's a dearth on outside, and that outside dearth away from the hive tells the bees that they are not going to start hassling the queen to keep on laying. Obviously she can't because she's contained, but what I'm getting at is if you work with the bees and you try and do a forced brood break when there is a dearth on, it's absolutely brilliant, because the bees get the message there's no forage coming in, and the bees aren't inclined to lay or to want the queen to lay. And all the physiological effect of having no brood doesn't bother the bees. They don't give the queen grief. Whereas if you try and cage the queen when there's a flow on and she's not laying, they try and throw supersedure cells as soon as they can, but we don't seem to see any of that. Last year, when I caged my queens for the first time, what I'm seeing is a really good kind of marriage between the effect outside and the queens being completely confined. And what I was seeing was the few colonies that I didn't confine, I actually noticed this more because I was in the colonies looking to see how the other colonies were behaving. I noticed that there was absolutely no problems at all, and they weren't trying to throw supersedure cells. They weren't going, whoa, there's nectar coming in, what's going on, the queen isn't laying, and they weren't having that stress. So as soon as I released the queen and fed and gave pollen sub, which is what I do, explosion, eggs everywhere, colony back to normal, minus the mites. And what did I see this spring? I'm not saying that it's proof, but I've had really good colonies. I seem to have got my numbers down last year, and I've had a fantastic honey crop. I mean, a honey crop that I've never had in my life here. So, you know, it's not definitive proof, but it just says that I can't have been doing things too badly. So, you know, I'm kind of on the right lines. To me, the best thing to have is to do that 2 years in a row, because we always say Varroa is kind of a 2-year cycle. Because you might get your numbers down 1 year, and then if you don't treat much the next year, the numbers are right back up really high again. And then you're going to get overwintering problems the following year. But if you can do it 2 years consecutively, and when you start dropping your numbers, you can vape again with broodless colonies, that means that you really are going to hit the mites. And any ones that manage to escape being treated, generally you'll get, because you start with a little bit lower numbers the next year round. I'm not saying a lot lower, I'm just saying a little bit better, because your colonies are a little bit stronger, they got away quicker in the spring, they resist things better, they grow better, and it's that kind of feeling that you're kind of on the winner, you know. So why didn't I raise my own queens? Well, I wasn't expecting to get this batch of queens in the post, because I hadn't actually signed up in time this year to this place I get them from. I asked for a load in July, which they've already ordered. But when I said, have you got any spare? They said, well, did you reserve any? And I said, well, no. They said, well, there you go. And I missed the deadline. Their books were full, you see. But so what I'm going to do is I'm using these queens initially here today, because I've got some mini plus that are on the point of swarming, and I want to break them down today. But the other bank of mini plus, the main lot of mini plus, I'll probably bring up here when I've made them up, and I'm going to make some 3-day-old cells. So I've got a cell builder that's old, and next to it I've got a massive colony that's absolutely enormous. So I'm going to take the queen away in a nuke from that colony next door that's enormous, and use the old cell builder, because all the bees will go back to the same place and it'll make enough cells. I might need 30 or 40 cells, but that's all I'm going to do. And that will just cover me until, you know, while I'm using up these mini plus and not wasting my resources. So my thought is the reason why I'm going to use some of these queens in mini plus this year is, as I said, I don't really want to start making big splits now, because we're almost at the start of the flow. I could do it, but I want to leave those colonies strong so that when I cage the queen after and make a split, there's bees for everybody. There's enough bees all through. And it means I might get a bit more honey. Just going to try it that year and see what happens. The other reason is I want to get them used. I've banked them, but I want to get them used straight away because I don't want to leave them in the bank any longer. Okay, because I've had to feed them, I've had to give them extra nurse bees to make sure there's plenty of nurse bees to feed the bees that are caged. But one observation I will say is the queens I've had in the post, when I bank them, I'm finding they're accepted much, much better, and I'm losing none in acceptance. And what I'm doing is I'm making the nuke, putting the cage in straight away. Sorry, putting the queen in straight away in the cage, in the colony, and then I'm releasing the tabs the next day. So they are released within 3 days. And that way, there's less chance of them making queen cells, because whenever you isolate the queen in a colony that's got brood and larvae and young larvae, often because there's no transmitting pheromone, they will make queen cells. Or, yes, emergency cells, that's what I'm getting at. So, and you're less likely to miss them because you, obviously, if you haven't got time to go and check them, you assume that the queen, that when she's released, will tear them down. And she doesn't always do that. And this little runt of a queen that hatches out will then go and kill your nice pedigree queen who's actually been accepted. And that's the problem. That's one of the downsides of introducing queens. I could use the pushing cage method, but on these Mini Plus, it's a little bit difficult because there's not very much room in the frames. So I'm just going to get all the gear together. I'm probably going to make about 10 today and use all the equipment I've got here. I've got loads of stock in the shed that I haven't used yet this winter. My shed is still full. So I'm going to be getting this all ready first, and then afterwards I'll be putting that all together, and we'll go and break down some Mini Plus in the shade. I've got a couple of hives in the shade that I can use, that I can break down, and they're full of honey, so I'll be putting one complete slab of honey in as well to get them going, but I will be feeding them because it helps acceptance. So it's utilising what I've got. I'm lucky I was able to get queens at a really good price because I've always bought them from this company, and they kind of look after you a bit. But I can't say that I really wanted them now, but I'm glad they're here. So next spring I'll have Mini Pluses that are really strong because they're wonderful queens, these. And also I will be able to make some early splits to get those, to make up any losses I've lost over the winter. It's just a different way of thinking. I could do that with nukes if I made nukes, but I don't particularly want to split my colonies. I might get some colonies now, I'll split into 3 or 4 in a month's time and go, what the hell, I'll just split these up into 3 or 4 and make extra colonies, and that might be a way of doing it. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet, but with the amount of colonies I got, I should have enough to use up all my nuke boxes, but I'll be using mated queens already this year because I just haven't had the time to raise my own. And it's not very sustainable, but I can afford it because I've had a really good honey crop this spring, so I can use some of that money to help me kind of catch up where I lost a bit of time. As I say, it's not what I'd really prefer, but it helps me out a big way, and I don't deny it. I'm not saying, oh, I raise my own queens, because I do both. I raise my own queens and I buy a few in. Mostly I just buy some breeder queens, as you know. So let's go and get this organised, and we'll do some breaking down of these Mini Plus and make some Mini Plus up. So I've managed to snuck right down in the corner here because we're going to be splitting this Mini Plus here. So I managed to get the truck right close, otherwise I'd be walking, I can't get it that close the other side, so we'll do it from this side. Well, you can see, I'll just tell you here, this is interesting, because this Mini Plus is 6 bodies. You can see there's a lot of bees in here. It's absolutely packed full. A lot of drones as well. But this colony is ready to swarm, so it's got to be sorted out. I'll just lift the roof off, and you'll see underneath. There's absolutely tons of bees to use here. So this is the right time to do this. I'm glad we're doing it now, because if we didn't do it, this would be gone, because the flow's about to start. When that colony knows the flow's going to start, because the top 3 boxes are full of honey as well. So we'll take them off first and we'll work with the brood underneath, because that's what we need, brood. Now I'm just going to pop you here for now. So hopefully you can see what's going on, and I'll show you each step as we break down the Mini Plus. I'm just going to light my smoker first and get my gear on. The other thing I didn't mention is, when you're doing Mini Plus, you have to be very careful of temperatures, because you can make up Mini Plus and not get them to their destination quick enough, and you can have bees dying inside because they get over hot. Because it's very difficult to ventilate these boxes while they're foamed off. You've got underneath, we've got on ours a little breathing gap. I'll show you where it is. That's our base we make, okay? That's what my colleague taught me to make and what I use, because I think it's the better than you can buy for these, and they're much more solid. So they sit on that really well. But what I'm trying to say is though that you've got to plan your splits around the weather, and this week the weather is going to go stinking hot for us. Even though it's going to break down fairly quickly at the end, we're going to have a couple of days in the high 90s, maybe up to 100 F. 33 to 36 degrees, which is pretty hot. So I don't want to be doing bees when that's that hot. I might do them in the morning or late afternoon, but certainly don't want to be making splits. I'm going to do all I can the next 2 days. Just something to bear in mind, because if you do your splits and they get too hot, you open the door and they just come pouring out when you first put them down. You've always got to try and open the doors late in the evening so they don't fly too far, because they just get so hot they just come pouring out. So I've also had to find some foam, close off the entrances. That's all I use to close these off. So we just pop that in there like that, and each box is then foamed off. But so they have a bit of ventilation, and we're not making these colonies absolutely massive. We're just making them big enough to carry a queen until that queen starts to lay. In this case, she's already mated, so it'll be pretty straightforward. And as I said before, these are all options I'm using. I can do something different with this. You don't have to just use these mini plus for mating queens. We often use them for overwintering queens, and that's what I'm going to be doing. But these will be individual colonies, so that when I use them for overwintering, they'll build up next spring, give me loads of brood, and also I can then requeen them next spring. So with the queens I make, because they'll be ready to accept a queen. So anyway, let's get this ready. I'm going to try working without gloves to see how far we get. Because when you work without gloves, when you're doing mini plus, it's actually quite easy to then be very careful. But if you don't have gloves on, you can end up getting stung a lot. But I don't think we're going to have stingy bees with this lot, so I'm pretty sure they're going to be nice. Famous last words. So let's have a talk about configuration. In the colony I'm going to make up, I'm going to take 4 frames out of the colony. I'm going to take at least 1 full frame of honey. I'm going to take at least 2 frames of brood. I'm going to take another one that's mixed. And in that afterwards, I've got 2 frames. They're all clean. They've got no wax moth in. The bees will just take on those and rebuild them. Okay, so they've got room to build, and they'll have 4 frames from their own colony already, which they'll recognise. So that's how I make up my mini plus. But I'll show you me doing it right now. So I'm going to try and show you me breaking down the boxes at the start, but it's not altogether easy because I can't actually get any way of holding the camera while I'm breaking it down. So I'm going to do it from the truck side here, and all being well, you'll get the idea, because I'm going to be able to narrate. I've got my microphone on, so we should be okay in that respect. Let's put that back up here. We get a bit of height here. So, smoker. So what we're going to do at first, we're just going to separate the majority of the honey from the majority of the colony. So we're going to smoke it. I don't want to smoke it too much. I just want to be able to take off the individual pieces. I went in here yesterday and I checked that there was no queen cells, so I knew I had a little bit of time, but I wanted to just get on with this. So I'm not going to smoke them too hard. See, what you have to do with mini plus is, because they will stick the top frame to the frame of the one underneath, if you don't go in and just open up each frame to remove that glue, that joint, when you try and rip these apart, you'll bend the corner. But I only did this yesterday, so I know that it's okay to do this now. Okay, so that's all honey. So I can just show you these slabs of honey in here. They're absolutely enormous. This is the feed we have. I'll take one straight out and put it straight into the colony with bees on it. It's unlikely there'll be any queen on this part because she will be down in the brood nest, but this is what we call a slab of honey, okay? Beautiful frame, nicely made up. There's already bees on that. I'm giving an eye to check there's no queen on here. But we'll pop this in the box. And don't forget, we're doing this today when it's nice and warm, so it's likely that most of the forager bees will be out, and this box is going to have less aggressive type bees in. It's not that they're going to be aggressive, but it's just something to bear in mind that if you pick the time you make nukes up, you also have an easier time making up nukes. So we've taken one frame of honey out there. There's so many bees in this box. I'm going to have to put a little bit of smoke on here before I take the next one down. But I know where the brood starts. I saw this yesterday. This is full of honey as well, and so is the next one, but this might be mixed. Let's have a little quick look here. If it's mixed, then I can use some of this brood here. The key to making up nukes is having some brood, because it keeps the bees there. I think this is mostly, yeah, this is still all honey. So, I mean, it's just incredible. Look at that. And there is too much honey in here, and I should have maybe harvested some of this and just put it through the extractor, but it's very difficult to extract this, and because I haven't made up any nukes already, and it's been such an amazing spring, quite a few of my nukes have swarmed. But as we say all the time, it is what it is, and there's nothing more you can do about it. So I'm not going to smoke that too much, just so I can grab the frame off. So we want 2 frames of brood basically. And that one is a pretty good candidate, as I say. Pretty amazing frame of brood. This is the kind of thing we want. That's going to be emerging pretty shortly. No queen cells on it. No sign of any queen. I want to really leave the queen there if I can. I mean, isn't that just beautiful? If only they were all like that. Anyway, we'll pop this one in. That one goes there. And we're going to find another frame of brood and then a partial frame. So that colony is going to be so well populated. The thing with mini pluses, as you break them down, you end up with a lot of gear all over the place, and it is a bit of an epic task. I mean, look at that. That's too good to harvest. But look at the bottom. I'm seeing a queen cup. Look at that. I'm seeing a queen cup there. 2 cups. See if there's any egg in them. They would have been gone. No egg. They would have been gone pretty quick though. So we'll take that one away, because the problem is as soon as I put these into a box, they're going to start to want to draw cells, but they will have queen pheromone close by. So there's the second one done. Let's see if we can find a partial one. I don't know if we will. It doesn't have to be all the time, but it's just nice if you can. There's a partial one with some eggs and larvae. That's exactly what I want. I'm just doing this like this because I'm getting rid of the forager bees, and there's some eggs in that cell, those cells there. Can I see the queen? No. And she probably would have gone because I smoked the box anyway a little bit. But you see how nice it is when you make up Mini Plus with nice bees. It's just like a walk in the park, you know. No stress. You take your time. You're using the fact that most of the forager bees are out to your advantage. And that's ready. I'm going to give it a little shake, not that I really need to because there's plenty of bees, but I'm going to take you over now and we're going to go and get some queen cells out. Sorry, not some queen cells, some queens. And I'm going to bring like 5 over here because I think I'll probably get about 4 or 5 boxes from this. But I might struggle for brood later on, but we shall see. I'm going to shake these bees off because there's a nice lot of bees on here, but I'm going to be very careful to check and see if the queen is here, because look at the amount of bees on that one. You've got to be very careful. And you can do it like this. You can use your hive tool and just run it over the surface and the bees will fall off, but you can spot a queen if she's there as they run into the frames beneath. And there's no queen on this one, I don't think. Quite a few drones, but that's fine. They'll fly off. Okay, so let's give this a little shake. Plenty of bees in that one now, and they're going to also have warm weather, and they're also going to have hatching brood. So we know that that colony will have hatching broods to supplement the bees that are dying. Because don't forget, from the minute we make up this nuke, bees are starting to die. That's their life cycle. Bees are constantly making bees because they're losing bees, but obviously in the balance, in the spring and summer, the balance, they make more bees than are dying, and that's how the colony gets bigger. But you've got to remember that when you get a swarm, when you hive a swarm, until that queen starts to land, until those nurse bees start to hatch, those first few bees, which is going to be 21 days, there's going to be no more bees born. So if you put a small swarm in a big box, by the time you get the first brood out, that colony is already challenged to keep that colony warm. Okay, so just remember that. But this has got, we're doing this in a time we know it's going to be hot. Okay, so we also know that they're going to be hanging out the front probably in a couple of days. So let's just go off with the smoker. We'll go and get some queens out the bank. We'll leave this for now. I'll come back in a minute and divide the rest up. And I should be able to get another 4 or 5 out of this. That's all fine. That can just stay there for a minute. They're not coming to any harm at all. Let's go to over here. Another one to do there afterwards. You might remember over there on the right, that's where I made some cells. That's the existing colony. That was the cell builder. So this is where I'm going to make some 3-day-old cells in a couple of days. So we'll put this here. And I'll just show you how I've got this set up for banking queens. It seems to work pretty well for me. We've had no rain, okay? Everything's so dry, so I'm not really worried but about a bit of rain getting in, but it wouldn't, because these are a pretty strong colony full of bees. So I've added nurse bees to these. They all look pretty good to me. I think you can probably see that pretty well. And I've added 2 frames of brood underneath, so I'm glad I'm taking some of these away now. I don't like to leave them under-catered for, if that makes sense. But what I'll do is I'm going to take, say, 5, smoke them a little bit. You can see the yellow dot from the queens that are alive underneath. They're all looking great, and they're being fed well through the cage. And it just seems to me that this banking of queens for a little while, I'm not going to tell everybody that it's the best thing to do. I don't know, but for me it seems to work really well, because the bees, you can see the queen there, see the queen there, all pretty good. That one's lost a few of its workers, so I might take that one now and use that, because I want that queen to be introduced pretty quick. In fact, I might add a couple of workers to that one. You get occasionally one that does that, so you've got to be a bit smart with that. So I'll give her a few more bees. They might have been older bees that were put in with that queen. I doubt it, but they could have been. So we'll take another one here. They're all really good. I'm really pleased. All the workers are alive in all the rest of these, so we'll take 5 for now. But it reduces the amount that these bees have got to spend, amount of time they've got to spend looking after these. I don't like to have too many in one colony. So it's just a queen excluder with the colony beneath. Look at that, beautiful. Okay. And what I can do is I can actually use some of these bees to top up this one. And what you've got to be so careful of here is, the problem is, if you want to try and get out the bees that have died, it's a nightmare, because the second you undo this, the queen's going to want to fly. So you've got to grab her, and you've got to grab her damn quick, I tell you, because she will be gone and you've lost your queen. Taking a heck of a risk here. Here she goes. We got her. And also, when they're lively, she can still sting. So I can undo this. Okay, I can shake these dead bees out. Okay, it's not ideal, but it happens. So we're going to get a few more into here. Now, can I do this one-handedly? I'm going to pop the queen back in. This is where I've got sticky fingers. She's back in, okay, and what does it? Just cover that hole over there. Come on you, off you go. So she's back in there, and I've got my finger over the hole. This is a great thing about these cages. As long as you know where the queen is and you can see her in the colony in here, you can see where she is, so you can just take your finger off and add a nurse bee. And I know these are likely to be nurse bees on this frame, and these are the ones that have been feeding this queen, so they're going to continue to do that. So I'm going to grab one here. I'm useless at grabbing bees, I always end up getting stung. One. Two. 3, get in. 3, 4, 5, 6, that'll do. So I've renewed those nurse bees in that one. They're a bit lively at the moment. And I hope they're not going to try and kill her. I don't think they will. They're just trying to get out, that's all. They'll calm down. No, they're not doing anything to the queen, so that's good. Right, that is done. So I'll take those with me. I'll leave these ones here. Put this cover back on. Incidentally, if I had some pollen stuff, I would put it in next to those queens as well, because it gives them something to work on. So, that is one thing done. What I'm going to do is take one of these queens, put these straight in as they are. You don't need to really rush to do this, okay? They're not all going to fly off, because remember, you've got rid of most of your nurse bees, or your forager bees. So we're just going to pop that in there for now. That queen will be looked after until I'm ready. Tomorrow I'll come back and undo the tabs, and I'll start to eat that out. But I will give this a feeder as well when I get to where this is going to go. It'll stay in the shade tonight, and then tonight I'll move it away. And that is generally how I make up my mini plus. Now obviously, if I was using virgin queens, I'd run a queen in at the same time, and then I'd leave it closed for 24 hours. But I wouldn't leave it closed for any more than that. Some people I speak to leave it closed for 3 days, and they say it's a specified time. I don't feel that's necessary, because if you're moving bees to another place, I think it stresses them out too much. But anyway, everyone does different things. I still haven't found a method of queen introduction that is universally accepted. Obviously, a pushing cage is the best thing, but if you're running in virgins or you're putting in cells, the best thing is to put in cells within 24 hours of that nuke or colony becoming queenless. That's what we all try and do. Well, we're done with this one. I got 5 made up. There's 5 there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That one's got to have a roof and it's got to have the foam in. But just to show you how many bees there are in this colony, it's absolutely packed. So what I'll do is I'll leave this a couple of days. I'll put extra frames in the lower section so that she can recover the brood. But for now, it'll take a little bit of time to recover. But that's a colony I made last year on a single box. I added boxes all this spring, and there's obviously too much honey. But what I'll do, as soon as it starts to recover, I'm going to put it under a nuke. Or sorry, I'll put a nuke underneath it, and then that nuke will grow down, and or I may even put a hive. And at the end of the summer, I'll shake down some of these frames and use the honey to boost other mini plus before the winter. But this means now that queen will get away again, and it will give me a nuke or a hive, whichever I decide to. But I think there's enough bees to make a hive, to be honest. So that was a good start. I've used up some of those queens already. I've taken the pressure off those queens that are being looked after, so there's even less to look after by the bees that are there, because they're a little bit low on nurse bees till the nurse bees I put in start hatching out. But now I need to get more mini plus boxes ready for tomorrow, so I can go and split the main area and get all those done, because what I'll do is I'll be able to make the cells really quickly, and I'll actually, as soon as the cells are ready, I'll go in and cut out the queen cells they try and make when I've got the queens ready. So it'll work out really well. So I kill off the queens, they try and make the cells, and then I put in a 3-day-old cell myself. So it actually works out really well. So as far as they're concerned, there's no difference. So on to the next thing. I hope you enjoyed that, something different. Just don't forget, with beekeeping, you've got masses of options to do something different. And there's no right or wrong way really of doing it. There is guidelines, but often it's just what works for you in your area. Be dynamic, think outside the box, and enjoy it. Take care. Bye for now.